Hi, I'm Judy Shintani from Foothill College, and today we're going to talk about Magritte. And I'm in my own studio today, so you'll see a lot of artwork behind me on the walls. Sometimes I video at other locations, but today I'm in my studio. So in one moment, we will look at some PowerPoint slides I've made about Magritte. Okay, so this is a picture of Rene Magritte with one of his paintings behind him. He's known for the bowler hat. So his work is really about surrealism, and it is a 20th century avant-garde movement in art and literature. And surrealism is a style in art and literature in which ideas, images, and objects are combined in a strange way. Very dreamy. This is a quote from Magritte. "Everything we see hides another thing. We always want to see what is hidden by what we see." So Rene Magritte lived from 1898 to 1967, and he's achieved great popular acclaim to the movement of surrealism. To support himself, he originally worked as a commercial artist, and he shaped his fine art in a way that kind of mirrored his the idea of advertisement, that things were very abbreviated and had a big impact because you have such a short time to capture someone's attention when you're doing advertising. So he really was kind of anonymous. He was had a middle-class existence. His life symbolized by the bowler-hatted men that often populated his pictures. A lot of conceptual artists have admired his use of text in his images, and painters in the 1980s admired his kitsch in some of his later work. His work could be described as deadpan and really illustrative, and a lot of repetition. So he had a lot of motifs within his paintings, and he multiplied copies of those same images in some of his greatest works. Freud often just thought of repetition as a sign of trauma. And the commercial art idea of questioning conventional modernist belief in the unique original work of art. So a combination of commercial ideas and fine art. His illustrative quality resulted in a really powerful paradox. Images that were beautiful in their clarity and simplicity, but also had kind of interesting ideas and provoked unsettling thoughts. His images seem to declare that they hide no mystery, and yet they're always really strange. A biographer, David Sylvester, brilliantly described his paintings as the sort of awe felt in an eclipse. As I mentioned earlier, he often combines text and visual signs in his work, and that there's a mystery which was motivated by a spirit of rational inquiry and wonder at the misunderstandings that can lurk in language. The men in the bowler hats can be interpreted as self-portraits, and there's also portraits of his wife Georgette, and the couple's apartment appears in a lot of his work. So we need not look for the mysterious, since it lurks everywhere in the most conventional areas of our life. Okay, so now I'm going to show a few videos.
When is a kiss? Not exactly a kiss. A landscape, more than just a landscape. Or a portrait, something, well, surreal. In the world of Belgian painter Rene Magritte, nothing is what it seems.
Magritte is all about making pictures that make you think about pictures.
He's the artist who looks at ordinary objects, but in these extraordinary ways. Like a fireplace with a locomotive dashing out under full steam, or this portrait of a man made of a birdcage. This picture epitomizes sort of the way Magritte creates very clear pictures, and the longer you look, the more you realize that their meaning is absolutely unclear. Anne Umland is the curator of The Mystery of the Ordinary, an exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art in New York that focuses on the evolution of Magritte's work from 1926 to 1938. It's a time when he makes quantitatively and conceptually more works in more modes, more varieties than he ever had before. It is this period when Magritte becomes Magritte. René Magritte was born in Les Signes, a small town in Belgium, in 1898. Not much is known about his childhood. His father was a textile merchant, and when Magritte was 13, his mother committed suicide. I think what was probably even more impactful on him than the event of the death itself is that he would remain, when he was a young boy, locked in a room with this depressed woman. Honestly, if you wish to read back into the works, look at the type of spaces Magritte is depicting and think about how claustrophobic they are. In 1927, Magritte joined André Breton, Salvador Dali, and other artists in Paris. They became known as the Surrealists, creating unexpected, often dreamlike imagery. You both have an image, a self-image of Magritte practicing his craft at the same time as you have an image of his conceptual process, because the more you look, you realize, of course, he's staring at an egg, right? But what is he painting? That he's painting a bird. Challenging the viewer's perception of reality would become Magritte's hallmark. He was something of a paradox. While his works defied convention, there was nothing of the artistic bohemian about him. He often painted in a suit and was married to the same woman, Georgette, for 45 years. Magritte lived a secluded life and died in 1967, but his whimsical, playful, mind-bending images had already been embraced by popular culture. His apple was the inspiration for the Beatles' Apple record logo, and rock album covers mimicked his designs. And how about this eye? Look familiar? And someone asked him what he thought about CBS appropriating his painting, The False Mirror, the eye filled with sky. The famous eye was based on his painting. On his painting. And he sort of felt indifferent about it because what CBS ended up with was just a symbol on a background that was aiming to sell something or brand something, whereas his painting had no purpose other than poetry. Billionaire and avid collector Wilbur Ross understands that poetry. He owns 25 Magrittes.
Even Andy Warhol had Magritte. And I think you can argue that pop art couldn't have occurred without Magritte. Pre-Magritte, who would ever have painted a Campbell soup can?
Is it fair to say you are the world's largest private collector of Magritte?
Oh, I don't know. Probably the most active one right now.
Right.
It's just when you get obsessed, you get obsessed.
2 of Ross's paintings are on loan to the exhibition, which is the first solo Magritte show in New York City in more than 20 years. What do you want people to feel and be left with after the show? I'd like them to understand what a great modern artist Magritte is. He's always saying a picture is just a picture. An image is not the same as the thing itself. In other words, look and think, because in the world of René Magritte, everything is open to interpretation.
Hi, I'm Storm Thorgerson of Norwegian ancestry, and I'm a designer of album covers. I have done rather too many album covers for some people's liking, predominantly for Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, 10cc, and more recently, Muse, Cranberries, Biffy Clyro, good band. etc., etc. I probably first came across Magritte via my mother, and I think my mother rather indirectly encouraged my interest in art, particularly in painting. And Magritte was probably an early interest, I think because he dealt not with technique so much as with ideas. And some of them are quite funny. I like to look because it makes me smile. And I think that Magritte may have influenced other people because his ideas are quite easy to assimilate and not terribly complex. I think I took away from Magritte a sort of a love of oddity or oddness, or rather juxtaposition or contrariness, is to play with the reality. So in a sense, I have to set it up as a real thing, which has been slightly twisted. That's the contrariness, the oddness. We often stage these things for real and don't do them in a computer because the reality has its own attributes. What you see is what you get. If you were to do it as a drawing or an illustration or in the computer, it would always remain a fantasy, not a real thing. And it's really fun to do a real thing, let me tell you. I mean, I'm very interested in intentional ambiguity. You know what it is, but not why it is. You might know what it is, but not how it is. And there was one particular cover that was very consciously about Magritte. It was a sort of homage. It was called Wish You Were Here, Pink Floyd, and we did 4 pictures. And the 4 images included a man on fire, a man diving into a lake, a veil floating in the air in Norfolk, and a man in a desert who had no features. The one that was on the back cover, which was a man in the desert, is very obviously, and was supposed to be, a Magritte thing. So I think there is a certain Magritte feeling to the cover. It does confound you a bit because you look at it and think, well, is this real? I mean, I am predominantly an image maker, so I try and come up with images that will suit the music. In the contemporary world, rather than in a gallery, I'm trying to persuade the viewer to look again, to give the album cover a second look as they will give them. So partly you look at it and say, well, that's pretty silly or strange or weird. What does it mean?
So I hope you enjoyed learning about Rene Magritte today, kind of an unusual character. And the last video showed an artist that used a lot of Magritte-like images in making album covers. And maybe you might have recognized some of those album covers. So today I was looking around my studio and I thought, what are 2 things I could put together that are odd and may not be seen together normally, to just think about them a different way. So I picked up the seashell, conch shell. I'm trying to show it off better. Yeah. And I thought, what could I put with this that would make it seem unusual? And so I went to the kitchen and I got the spoon, and I decided I would put the spoon with the seashell. I don't know if you can see it very well. Here we go. And put these 2 things together. And I thought that would make a nice piece of art, to have a seashell and the spoon together and do something interesting with that. So maybe what you can do is go around your room and look for something, 2 different things that may not normally go together, and do a drawing. Okay, so this is Judy Shintani from Foothill College. I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.